Well, today's topic is Sapodilla grafting. Sapodilla is something that I never grafted until about 3 months ago. And it has some unique challenges. The main one is that it has a lot of thick sap, which can interfere with the scion and the base plant joining together. So one of the pluses, though, is Sapodilla is a type of grafting that you can do in the winter. So about 3 months ago, I gave it my first shot and learned some things. Basically, I used the same methods that I use for mango grafting just to see if it would work out with the Sapodilla. And I had a pretty good amount of success. This right here, these are my failures. This one, I have no idea why it failed. We've got some top cleft grafts here that failed. But the good news is if your rootstock is old enough and you graft up, on the top, like far away from where the roots are, you can actually just work your way down, keep using that same rootstock. This was a very young rootstock in this pot. I just thought, what the heck, we'll try it, because I have a lot of young rootstock, not so much of old rootstock, and it was too young, so it died. One thing that's important, you can see that with this one, is that you need to leave leaves below the graft. With mangoes, a lot of times you can just do a top cleft graft and not have any leaves below it and it will work out, but not a good idea for Sapodilla grafting. You want to leave a lot of leaves. This one was a young seedling, and I just put a small amount of graft wood up there to see if that would work. I don't know if it was because this was such a young base plant or that this was too short of a scion, but that was definitely a fail also. Here's another one that I think there were a few leaves. Yeah, there were. This is still alive. It's got a lot of shoots coming out of Sapodilla, but this graft did fail. So what I'll do in this situation is I'll knock off these lower shoots and let it just develop a main stem. So there's 3 shoots that I'm taking off below, and the top one seemed to be bigger anyway. So now all the energy of this particular root system and stuff will go to this shoot only. So eventually I'll be able to use this again, but that'll take a long time. So over here I have a few of my successes. Basically I tried 2 different types of grafts, top cleft and then also this is a top cleft. I also did a side veneer graft. So that is a success. That was a fairly young rootstock too. This is pretty skinny, but that one worked out. And these are not grafted. This is hopefully to be used very soon. This was a piece of graft wood on this one that it was not the terminal graft wood. I used on a shoot, I had already used the end one, and I used the next step down. So it has a nice piece of growth going out there. We also have, it seems like this particular shoot here is coming out of the graft itself. I don't really think that's a good idea to have it down that low. It could be part of the base plant, so I'm just going to knock that off, leave all of the energy to go to this new growth there. So, this is crazy, but I do weird stuff. Here's a rootstock that's pretty much ready to use. When I planted the Sapodilla seed in here, I also put basil seeds in, just because it's so long. It takes so long before the Sapodilla is ready for grafting. So I thought, might as well have something working in this pot. So now with these basils going to seed, we have a lot of basil all around the greenhouse. I like basil a lot, but I'm not keeping up on that supply side. Not enough demand. So here's a product of the whole grafting. I've put that in a 3-gallon pot so it can start developing a better root system. But that's, this particular root system here, the base plant is got a pretty good diameter to the trunk here. So I think this top part will grow very fast. So one other thing I learned, I do experiment around to see if some things will help. And one thing I was wondering about was if you wrapped a part of the leaf that was on the scion, instead of cutting it off, you wrap it with some buddy tape to prevent the moisture loss. Would that increase the chance of success, because it would be drawing some sap up to the leaf? And apparently it has no effect. This particular one is just one of the instances that I used for, like my experiment. This one, however, I'm just noticing it now. You have to be very careful with Sapodilla grafting. You might think that something has failed because it looks completely brown or black, but it's just really different from the look of mango grafting. So you don't want to give up hope completely. This, for instance, I had just pulled that out a moment ago. It's a skinny graft. It's got these shoots coming out of the base plant, but I just noticed that there's some green on here. So, there's just a tiny bit of green. So I guess I can't give up hope on that. I'm going to take off these shoots down below, and hopefully that little speck of green will become a leaf. So we'll see. It's really, I can't imagine that the green is from anything other than a leaf bud. But as I say, the whole rest of the scion looks really, really dead. So definitely don't give up hope on these. This particular one feels very crinkly. This one, I just gonna leave it, even though it looks so dead, just on the off chance that it's still alive, because I definitely have been fooled before. But let's get to some grafting, because I'll just show you what I've sort of learned on my own and see if that works for you. So I've actually prepped these scions. It was a while ago, so they're already shooting out. I prep them in the same way that I prep mango scions. So that's basically cutting the leaves off the leaf stems and then waiting for the buds to swell. But this is long past the time when they start to swell. But we'll harvest some of these. And these seem flexible. So we can come back later, like in a month or two, and actually harvest other scions from these places also. But that gives us 3. All of these young leaves that are on these scions, basically I don't think that those will help the scion to take at all. It seems to me that those just died on previous grafts. So I'm just going to cut those back. So there's 3, and we're going to go get some from our big Alano tree in the grove. So here's our big Alano tree, and I actually prepped a lot of scions from this tree also. It has a bunch of growth coming out this way, and I thought, well, we might as well make scions before we trim it back. So we've got a few opportunities to do that. Let me just show you here. These leaves that have already started to come out, I think those are too long, so I'm just going to cut those back. There's plenty of food in the tip of the scion. These I'm not so sure about. These are just emerging, so I'll leave them on there, what the heck. And then we'll go put them on some plants. So here are the scions that I just cut off, 3 of them from the first tree. And the first thing to do, of course, is to wrap it. Now I use buddy tape, but there's other materials that you can use. Basically, you want to make sure that you prevent the moisture from leaving the scion. So I try and give an extra layer to the very top so those leaves don't grow out too quickly. Just break off any dead stems that you have. This one looks like it could use a little bit more buddy tape just on top. It's got some, that's the one that had sort of the newish leaves. So, 3 scions, we need 3 plants. So here's one that the original graft failed. It's just very crackly, very brown inside. So that top part of the plant we are not going to use. We have, just see what I'm going to do with this. I'm not sure yet, so hedge your bets. All of these young shoots that are coming out of the sides, I take those off. You know, it's just what I do. I don't know, people who do this for a living might leave them on, but I'm using the same sort of logic or procedure as I use in mango grafting. There's one down here, there. So we have, 4, oh, there's a little shoot coming out here too. Like 7 leaves or so. So this is a fairly thick rootstock, and so I think that this one's the biggest diameter scion, and I have an option of doing a top cleft graft or a side veneer. It seems like the side veneer ones are a little slower to take, so I'm going to use a top cleft graft on this. So they cut a little bit further down here because of the previous graft. You want to get rid of whatever cut was on that. This is going to be a narrower scion than the diameter of the rootstock, so I'll need to cut make the cut off center. So that's going to mean this particular leaf, I think, is going to be in the action, so we'll take that one off. Sometimes you can leave leaves on with these grafts, but we'll just have to see how it works out. Right now, there's a lot of sap coming out of this top of the cut. It shouldn't matter. We've got pretty much no sap coming out of the scion. So basically, same thing as I do with the mangoes, is you want to get a flat surface. You don't want any lumps or waves, or you don't want the middle to be higher than the edges of the cut. Just have it as flat as possible. Now, I'm not doing a perfect V on this one side because it's going to be on the outside edge of the graft, and so it should work out fine. Right now, let's see, what are we going to do here? I'm going to try to leave those leaves on the tree, but we'll see how that goes. If they come off, it's not a big deal. So I am doing an off-center cut, and that should work out pretty well. This side is a little bit longer than this other side that's going to the outside. Looks like that's good though. So doesn't seem to be extra sap in that area that the two trees need to, or the two parts need to make it come together. But the first thing I do is to wrap it with buddy tape and try and get it as secure as possible. And then I'll come back with other tape to do the rest. So this is actually going to use a couple pieces. And the thing that I think is very important, especially important to do with Sapodilla, is make sure that there's no air in between the parts of the two trees, the scion, and this whole area really needs to be secure. So I'm running low on grafting elastics, so I am improvising using some old nursery tape. It's too thick to, too wide to use it in its original form, so I've just been cutting, so anyway, that should be plenty long. So the main thing is definitely trying to get this as tight as possible. Sapodilla, a seedling like this is a lot woodier than most mango seedlings you'll be grafting or top working with. So I should be able to pull this tighter and not have it damage the plant. You can actually like tourniquet plants if you wrap these things too tight, but this I'm just wrapping it a little more tightly than I usually do with mangoes. And this kind of a material, it's a little bit slower to work with than the elastic strips, but as I say, I'm having a little trouble with getting a good supply of those. And one of the benefits two benefits of using this tape, it's immediately obvious, like which plants are grafted, because it's not a natural kind of green. And the other thing is you can actually reuse this particular piece of nursery tape on another graft. So anyway, there's one. Let me see if there's another situation that's fairly different. Most of the the sprouts are the top of the plant here, just this one lower down. I'll take that off. Now I'm going to look for a narrower piece. Both of those are pretty comparable in diameter. And I don't use real young wood. This is way too flexible. When it starts being less flexible, it seems like that gives it a better shot at success. So since these have sprouted out in this new area, I think I'll graft just right below where the last, or actually that was the first one to sprout out, but the lowest one. So I'll cut this plant down there, right below where all these sprouts are. And there's still enough leaves, I think, to have this, an active plant. You really don't want to just leave a couple leaves on it. It doesn't seem to like that. So again, I'm just going to make some nice flat cuts here. And the thing that's really I like to focus on is to make the tip, like if you can imagine, one cell thick. So it's really skinny. And then I'm going to take some leaves off, because they'll be lost when I wrap them anyway. So that should be enough. Got all that sap coming out right now. Let's see if I can just cut off that top part. That's a lot less sappy now. I'm going to quickly put this in. Okay, so it looks good. Line up the sides, at least one side really well. The other side doesn't have to be exact, but it's pretty darn exact. Then, of course, first thing I do is wrap the buddy tape around. When you twist it like this, it seems to be stronger. Hold everything a little bit more securely. And so it feels like nothing's moving around, so I'll go right to the nursery tape. Let's try to work from this other side here. Okay. Of course, start at the base, which is right about here. I like to just hold that, overlap it, so that it stays in place. And just, you want to do this slowly, because if you do it too quickly, you can actually move the graft out of place. So just take your time, make sure that nothing is bulging out of the sides. And okay. So there's two. Guess we'll do one more. Here's the scion that we're working with. And having old enough rootstock at this time of year is a problem for me anyway. It looks like this is narrower than the scion, this part of the tree, but a lot of times with mangoes, if you graft a thicker scion onto a skinnier shoot, it works out just fine. So I'm going to try that. I have to remember this was an experiment, and so that I can check on it. Sometimes my experiments, like get lost in the fray. Oh. So I cut a little bit of the edge off of that particular piece, so I'll use the pruners. Get back to, I don't want to lose any important parts to this scion. Probably going a little bit too quickly then. It's got a little bit different feel than carving the mango wood, and since I don't have a lot of some varieties of Sapodilla, I try and go very slowly. I hate to lose a scion because of miscarving it. So one way to get a nice cut is if you start sort of close to your hand on whatever blade you use, and then draw it across like that as you're cutting, it makes a flatter cut. So that's what I'm doing here. And of course, don't cut your fingers, that's a bad thing. So that looks good. And also with this particular graft, I was experimenting with seeing if I could do a quick graft before it starts sapping out. Like when I cut off the tops of these trees, that little that white sap just accumulates at the cut. So I'm hoping I'm fast enough to just get this in without coming into without having that happen. So good. Once again, I'm cutting below these shoots. That looks like a pretty good place to graft. Got my eye on the razor blade and try and do this quickly. Oh, it's sapping out so quickly. Here we go. Right down the center. And that should be just about right. So it looks like that's good contact there. I'm holding this together so sap doesn't accumulate between those two places. And just sort of holding it very firmly so that it doesn't have a chance to block the graft. I mean, that's not its intention, but these sapodillas, they earn their sap part of their name real honestly, whatever. So anyway, grafting that part, wrapping this part first and still trying to hold it tightly so that sap is not a problem with hindering the union there. And then get another piece of nursery tape to hold it more securely in place. The buddy tape does a pretty good job in some situations, but I found that it's just even better if you use something with a little more strength. Buddy tape sort of degrades pretty quickly. So again, just wrapping over the tail so that it stays in place, and wrapping up to the top part of the base plant, the top part of the cleft, and then I just wrap a little bit more, just because sometimes it'll loosen up a little bit with this particular material anyway, loosen up a little bit when you are tightening the nursery tape. So I want to make sure that it doesn't loosen up in the wrong place. So it's not the ideal thing to wrap with, but it does a pretty darn good job. So it's a little slower than using the elastic strips. That feels like it's pretty darn tight. I think I'll have to compare some other grafting materials. But anyway, there we go. We've got 3 Sapodilla grafts, and they all had a little something different going on with the base plants. But the things that I think are important is definitely leave leaves on the bottom part of the plants. That's really important. When you see little shoots coming out, try and knock those off. The young leaves really don't earn their keep, and plus the plant will prefer this little shoot to trying to grow a scion up here. So if you remove them, it's just all the energy goes up to the top of the plant, which is what you want. So yeah, leave the leaves, and then of course wrap the union nicely, and use something to prevent moisture loss. These grafts can take a couple months sometimes to start growing, and at least that was the case with the ones I've done a few months ago. So be patient, and if you think that the scion is black and not any good, just keep it on there anyway, because I have been fooled. Anyway, that's it for Sapodilla grafting. Good luck with grafting your Sapodilla.